Welcome to the Past Life Awakening Institute podcast. I'm Mark Beale, a past life regression therapist and trainer. Each episode shines a light on healers who practice spiritual regression therapies like hypnosis and hypnotherapy with regression to this life, past lives, between lives, and spirit releasement therapy. If you're interested in having personal sessions or certification training in any of these modalities, go to my pastlifeawakeninginstitute.com website for details. So thanks for watching and enjoy this episode. Today my guest is Myagmarjargal Purev. She's a past life and spirit releasement therapist born in Mongolia and based in Fukuoka, Japan, and she gives sessions online. Myagmarjargal is her Mongolian name. She also goes by Meg. So Meg is a psychologist working in the Psychological and Psychometrics Institute of Mongolia, and she's now in Japan doing a PhD in Kyushu University. She lectures and does research on the social and cultural and psychological aspects of migration. She discovered Dr. Brian Weiss's books on past life regression and then introduced hypnotherapy into her practice. She then took advanced training at the Past Life Awakening Institute and does a lot of work in past life regression and spirit releasement therapy. You can find her at her website, myagmarjargal.com, which is in Mongolian, and it's going to be in English very soon. And you can contact her by her email, and these links will be in the description below, so check those out. But for now, Meg, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here. So it's good to be able to chat. We've met a number of times before, going through case studies and aspects of these therapies. So for people that are watching, you can go to the timestamp. So we'll get to some nice stories that are coming up soon. But we'll start off by your background's pretty interesting there. So you've got work as a psychologist or training as a psychologist. So can you tell us a little bit about that healing path in psychology first?
I was trained in psychology, and I worked in both research and practice for some time, over 6 years in Mongolia before I came to Japan. For Mongolia, psychology is a relatively new field, and that was one of the the reasons why I really wanted to study psychology and contribute to the mental health and well-being of Mongolian people.
You had quite a bit of experience working with people on mental and emotional issues, and then you picked up the book by Brian Weiss, I think that was like 2014, and got interested in past life regression. So what was that like of, there are emotional and mental issues, but then there are spiritual issues. So with that sort of classical scientific background, what was it like to discover some of the spiritual aspects of hypnotherapy and Brian Weiss?
Actually, I was not really interested in doing psychotherapy or counseling in the beginning. I was more interested in carrying on doing research. But there were a limited number of people who could provide service. I had to automatically get into the practice side of it. And when I started practicing, I found out that what we were trained at and what I have been receiving training in have not really been enough to resolve many of the emotional and psychological issues. And I went through a lot of research to really find out what is the maximum or the optimal result that we get using the traditional psychological and psychotherapeutic techniques. But it was really, really limited. For example, phobia can be healed using CBT and other techniques, but still the rate of recovery was very low. And I knew that there was something more to that instinctively. So I was always looking for that something more. And in 2014, I found Brian Weiss books and started reading through it just out of interest. And then I found out that there were many issues that could be healed using past life regression therapy. And it instantly made some sense. And I always had this, dream of learning a past life regression therapy technique to integrate it into other psychotherapy technique to achieve more deeper healing, and also it's a very complementary. It's a very good complementary technique to psychotherapy, because in psychotherapy, many professionals look at hypnotherapy as being somewhat controversial issue. Some also believe that through recalling painful memories under hypnosis, re-traumatizes people. But this past life regression therapy itself had, I would say, it would provide higher point of view to the client. So I could sense that I could understand that there's something, it could provide certain safe environment to the client to explore their trauma beyond what we would understand as trauma in psychotherapy.
Okay, interesting. So 2014, you discovered Brian Weiss and connect with it quite quickly. But what was your path then to integrating it and learning more about it? So, and how do you even balance now? Do you still do sessions as a psychologist and then do hypnotherapy or past life regression as well? Or how do you combine or use them now?
Yes, I do both. And under the institute where I belong to, I practice psychotherapy, but I practice hypnotherapy independently. However, while I'm working with clients using psychotherapeutic methods, I usually get to this point I kind of know that it's beyond our psychotherapeutic technique, and hypnotherapy, especially spiritual hypnotherapy, would resolve many of the issues that have been that have not been touched by psychotherapeutic method. So I can say that I combine both in my practice.
Okay, how often would that happen? Like, what percentage of your clients would you say they need something beyond some of the psychotherapy?
I would say around 50 to 60%.
Wow, that's a lot. Okay, and so how do you feel, and how was that actually taken by some of your colleagues? With this controversy you mentioned, or this feeling that it may regressing people to past issues may re-traumatize them. So how was it taken by part of your scientific healing community, and how have you found your own experience? Was that something you even thought? Were you nervous about doing it years ago, but then have found out? So what are your views on that now? What do you say to people that might say, oh, don't do that, you might re-traumatize them, or regression's dangerous, that kind of thing?
Yes, I had somewhat mixed feeling about that, mixed expectations, because being from Mongolia, reincarnation and topics around that is very common.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure about the exact percentage, but the majority of the population practices Tibetan Buddhism. So although the professionals have scientific training and background in their daily life, they would hear these topics often. So I knew that it would not be something totally new to them. But at the same time, at this stage in Mongolia, where we're trying to build scientific psychological practices, I knew that there would be some people who would go against it, who would criticize it. But our institute, Psychological and Psychometric Institute of Mongolia, they have been quite open to my new practice, and they have actually been encouraging some of their clients to come to me, because they also knew that there were certain limitations in our traditional psychological methods. And recently, going beyond that, I started getting invites to podcasts and recommendations by other psychological, institutes and other psychologists. So I think overall they've been quite welcoming, and yeah, but of course with certain cautions.
Right, that's a good point, and I'm glad you brought that up. There are certain cautions. So I think a blanket statement that regression is too dangerous for anyone to do, you'll re-traumatize people. I think that's very limiting, and a view which is not backed up by a lot of experience that, you, I, and thousands of people have had, but absolutely with some cautions, which is people do need to be well trained and they need to know what they're doing to be able to practice it safely. Even with that, though, I find people with, that training doesn't necessarily take a long time, and it's not necessarily that complex because the subconscious mind has protective inbuilt elements that will often take care of any of the possible difficulties that people could get into. So that's interesting that you've got people or the institutes, you've got a background there. So in Mongolia, Buddhism is quite big, so people have an inherent understanding of past lives, and so we're past life regression therapists. So regression can just mean going back, recalling some of those memories, and then how they affect us, and that the understanding of karma becomes quite important there, whether we say it explicitly or not. And then you're getting referrals. So I was going to ask you, what are the kind of people that you work with and how you have this crossover between psychology and past life regression? So it sounds like it comes up quite a lot that people would want to take that extra step, and it's getting more supported. So when you do get these referrals from the psychology institutes, what kind of issues are those people having that they think, oh, let's take the next step with things like past life regression?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so whether it is referral or not, when most people approach me, they approach me mostly for psychological issues because many of them got to know about me as a psychologist. So people, whether it is referral or not, many people come for depression, anxiety problems, and phobias, and relationship issues. Yes, but mostly it is anxiety or depression.
What are the kind of people that come? Just them, so that's their issues. What about their personality types? Do you find that they are quite spiritual people, or not? Because we may think that, oh, you have to be very into spiritual things to even think about past life regression. Do you find that in your case?
None of them approach me for a spiritual reason. Most of them just present their issues, mostly psychological issues or relationship issues. And then when I explain my modality, um, I explain that you may be spiritual or you may not be. It's not important that you believe in it. It's just important to believe in the process itself. It's not about the assumptions and the spiritual beliefs. And yeah, and many of them actually had experience working with psychologists, and when they find that they don't have the results that they want, they don't find themselves to be recovering that well, they tend to come to me as a last resort.
Okay, yeah, that's good, and I think that's as it should be, because a lot of times, if you're a past life regression therapist, someone can approach you with a basic issue, and you can think, oh, I love past life regression, I'm going to have to give you this therapy that I love. Whereas that doesn't really work like that. I think it's really useful to assess what is the right treatment for them, and then give that to them, and it may not be past life regression at all. I think that's one reason why it's really useful to do hypnotherapy. Because a lot of times the issues, they really start in this life. And so we don't want to make the assumption or presume or push past life regression as like the solution or the cure to things, when oftentimes it isn't. But it's quite interesting, even up to 50% of the times, there's that extra step that they think they would like. And then past life regression can be possible. So we're certainly, like, neither of us are saying you must do past life regression for everything with everybody. It's absolutely not the case. Would you agree with that?
Yes, exactly. And actually, after going through their intake form, sometimes I recommend them to go back and work with their psychologist or psychiatrist for some time before coming back to me again, because that's when I see that people need more like conscious work in an effort to resolve their issues. Yeah, so that's how I work. And actually, many of the people who come to me have childhood traumatic issues. So for that, although hypnotherapy can do a lot, psychotherapy can do great work too. And once they have worked a lot at the mostly conscious level, doing a hypnotherapy makes things much easier and resolves the issues really well.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what I experience as well. So I see a lot of intake forms. Maybe people even read Brian Weiss and they're like, "Oh, I want to do that." But then you look at their issues and it's like, well, there are prerequisites. So you need to do those prerequisites first. Maybe speak to me in a month or a year, and but do the simplest things first. Work through some of those issues, and then a lot of the emotional and mental issues can be dealt with something else. But as you say, if then there's something more that you want to do, or if it does appear to be really a spiritual only issue now, then we can do something. But until then, do those prerequisites. So that makes a lot of sense. And well, it's quite interesting. You were saying like the background beliefs of people, like it's quite helpful if people come from a culture where reincarnation and Buddhism and these things are there. Although it sounds like a lot of the people are pretty secular. I find that as well. Sometimes people either have no interest or belief in past lives until we meet, or they may even have an opposite, which is their particular religion is definitively does not have past lives as a concept in it, but they can still take it as a metaphor or as a teaching story or parable, which helps them on their healing journey anyway. So they don't sort of get caught in too much to this, oh, do I believe it or not? And then consciously analyzing, rationalizing, going through it. They can just experience it, go with the process, have their results, and then integrate it into their life in their own way. So do you find that kind of thing? And is that part of what helps the secular versus spiritual? But you can end up just transcending that and just getting on with it and helping healing people regardless of that debate. That debate can rage on at the side and we can just heal people and it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah, exactly. The priority is to provide help or to get a help for the client. So yeah, it really transcends those kind of belief systems and limitations, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's really useful. I'm glad to hear that's happening in the environment that you're in, where you are now. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got here? So, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What was the culture in your town, the culture towards healing and spirituality? So, where'd you grow up?
Um, I was born in Ulan Bator, the capital city of Mongolia. But however, I grew up in Darhang, a smaller city in Mongolia. And then going to university, I had to move back to Ulaanbaatar. So basically, I grew up in Mongolia until I turned 19. Yeah, and where we grew up, as I said earlier, we practice Tibetan Buddhism, and also we have a very common shamanic practices. So all this spirituality, these kind of topics have been our part of our daily, life. And uh, actually, before psychology was introduced around 30 years ago, um, people, approached healing as something spiritual mostly, although we were under a communist system where the government banned religion for some time. People still practiced, especially Buddhism, undercover. So many people resolved their problems through uh, going to monks or psychics and things like that. And after 1990, we became a free country, I would say, to practice spirituality. So a lot of people started practicing shamanism, and also Buddhist practice became very free. So I kind of grew up in that kind of environment where this kind of spiritual issues or resolving problems through spiritual practice in our daily life. So yeah, so that was my upbringing. However, I was more interested in scientific practice. I was interested in resolving people's issues through scientific practices. So uh, when I was in my third year in university in Mongolia, I got a chance to study psychology in India. So that's how I started my journey in healing, I would say, but it started with scientific psychological training. Yes. So after that, yes, I continued practicing psychology, and I never really thought I would go back to spirituality to, take it as a healing modality.
Right. I'll just say as a side note, I think you went to India. You were in Bangalore about 2008, and I happened to be practicing past life regression in Bangalore in 2008 as well. So we were both there in India together. So India is a nice place to learn. And I'm just quite curious as well, just before we move on, about some of the shamanic traditions that are part of Mongolia. And I know in Tibet, in Tibetan Buddhism, that was preceded by a lot of shamanic traditions as well. And then it may have merged some of them in to a degree, or it's certainly still part of the culture. So can you tell us a little bit about were there, and you were drawn into the science, as you went off to university, but were there key people or books or teachers in this shamanic tradition or monks, in your earlier days that stand out to you or that were influential?
My family was not really into shamanism, but as you said, like Tibetan Buddhism was preceded by shamanic traditions. So our indigenous spiritual practice has always been shamanic, and from 16th century onwards, if I'm not wrong, we started practicing Tibetan Buddhism. So I did not really have much practice with shamanic tradition. However, one thing that was very strange or interesting to me was that every time I meet with Buddhist teachers and figures, they were always interested in having conversations with me, although I had very little interest in that. Yeah, but I cannot, before practicing psychology, I cannot really remember anybody who really influenced me when it comes to healing, both psychological and spiritual healing. However, after practicing psychology, I started meeting many more people who teaches Buddhism, and also Buddhist, monks, rinpoches, and and we had special connections, and many of them would ask me to do translations for them. And I can remember one encounter where I had this Rinpoche, can't remember his name. Yeah, he's a very he visited Mongolia very often, and when my mom asked me to go and visit him, I was very reluctant. And when I visited him, he gave me a Buddhist book and then said, "This is a quantum physics book to make me accept a book." So there was always those signs. I was always reluctant, but then I always got those signs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually going to ask you next, or come back to the monks, that how they may have influenced you. But then I was going to ask you, have you recalled any of your own past lives? And so maybe there are moments of like awakening where you meet a monk and you're like, oh, that woke me up. But it's like, why do these monks keep on asking me and connecting with me? And so then I think that does connect into some of your past lives that I know about. We've done some past life regression together, and we recalled some past lifetimes. So did that then, when you realize that, it's like, oh, this is why monks have been approaching me, or I felt connected to them because in fact I had past lives like that. So can you tell us a little bit about what you then realized through experiencing your own past lives?
Yes, actually, I had a very lucid dream about being a monk and escaping from some people, along with a few other monks. But I was not very sure if that was my past life or it was just a dream. Yeah, and then I had a past life regression therapy with you where I experienced myself as a Tibetan monk in 1930s, and it was a very very profound experience, and it was very healing. I was a Buddhist monk, probably a teacher, but at that time something unfortunate happened, and I lost my students, and I grieved in that life. And recalling that life made a lot of sense because as a teacher, I was teaching in a university in Mongolia. I was a very, very protective teacher. of my students, and that made sense. That made a lot of sense. And then also I started realizing, okay, this is the reason that all those Buddhist teachers had this very special connection with me, asking, always asking me to, do something with them or something for them, or it was not really for them. I guess they were trying to make me, get closer to who I was, at least in the past. And that made a lot of sense.
That's really interesting. So we have that regression that we did together, and that is actually on video as well. So that's also on my channel. So you can see some of the experiences that Meg had. And there was like a big, so now it makes sense looking back. Oh, a lot of some of these things that were happening in my life and the way that I was acting as a child, the way other people reacted to me, the way I reacted to my students in this life. Now that makes sense when you look at things that had happened in my past life. And so that people that have maybe watched that past life regression, they saw an interview afterwards, but now it's another 6 months or so down the track. So what's it been like integrating that experience, and what other things have you realized, or how has that session affected you, and recalling your past lives? What's that meant for you in this life?
Yes, it was a very, as I said, it was a very profound experience. It made a lot of sense about me. I could understand why I am the way I am. At the same time, it resolved emotional issues for me, emotional and physical issues for me. And one of them would be I, I always had this problem with facing responsibilities and this fear. So obviously that came from my past life experience, and that experience in my past life under this therapeutic experience healed the fear and this kind of blockages that I had. And also I had knee problems as a young person. I started experiencing knee problems. And actually, during my past life regression, I found that while I was grieving, I meditated for a long time, and the pain came from sitting for a long time, and it was very, very real experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And back then as well, I think you had like some doubts about, is past life regression really real? And, should I really go down this really spiritual path when there's my scientific path and that appears to be a conflict? But now you've, since that time, I think maybe it was 9 months ago, a bit more, since then you've taken a lot of strides and are now a fully fledged spiritual healer and teacher for a lot of people. So that's it's been an amazing development.
Yeah, exactly. Although I knew that past life regression would be very helpful, I always had this doubt: is it really real? Does it really work? Can I do it? Those questions are always there, and my own session really cleared those ones up.
Right. And so for people that have been following it, we had that session, maybe it was 9 months ago, but since then you've been given, and I think you've given some sessions prior to that in hypnotherapy and a bit of past life regression. In fact, had you given some sessions in past life regression prior to your own session?
Yes, I actually found your course on Udemy, and that was just a foundational course. I started learning the past life regression therapy for the first time there. That was prior to my own session, and also my professional course in hypnotherapy. And after starting to study the Udemy course, I started practicing past life regression therapy on people who are close to me, and it actually worked. And it has been working. So that's why I think I got more encouragement to get a past life regression for myself, and also because I had started practicing, I started having cases that led me to take a premium course with Past Life Awakening Institute.
Right. Yeah. So because of your, extensive background, so those certification advanced courses, there are a number of prerequisites. So it's actually relatively hard to get onto those courses, to be honest, because those prerequisites are quite high. You see a lot of the people on the podcast and people like me are psychologists and have a lot of training and experience as professional healers, working with a lot of emotional and mental issues. And then the jump to working with spiritual issues is a lot less. So you look at my courses and think, oh, it's not a lot of training required, and is it quite easy? But there's so much prerequisite required to get onto the course in the first place. And so yeah, exactly. And also as you practice it, you find that, oh, I can do some past life regression for some relatively simple or moderate issues, but then there are other things that come up, which is okay, now it's getting quite interesting. I think some in-person mentoring is going to be pretty important. And so how did you found that process of and also the other, so there are two parts of, when, as Meg says, when you train with the Past Life Awakening Institute, there's the mentoring in person where we can get into the really helping through the complex ones. And there's also working with my community of fellow healers like Meg and a lot of other people who've been on the podcast so far. So how did you find that process of having our calls and then working with other members of the community that we've got started?
Yes, yeah. So now looking back, the foundation course is really a foundation, and then going beyond that, yeah, I learned a lot. During the premium course, I think every step of the process taught me a lot. Taking up real clients and working on their issues with in a very systematic manner with mentoring helped a lot to hone on methodical, the technical side of it. Uh, Also, working with my colleagues, co-students, I would say, taught me a lot when it came to handling diverse kind of cases, and also learning from other students was made possible through our swap sessions and practices.
Right,
Yeah.
great. So, yeah, so that's part of the journey into doing a lot of past life and spirit releasement type sessions. So, now, so we've talked a little bit about your personal experiences. So, I'm curious now about some of the client case studies that you've got. So, can you tell us some stories with, a beginning of like what the presenting issues were, and then how it was, how you dealt with it, and then how it was resolved and what happened? So, can you give us some examples from the people you've been working with now?
Mhm. Yeah. So as I said earlier, I was practicing a bit before I took up the premium course. And actually, one of my first clients, I usually call her my first client, um, she was interested in exploring her past lives, but at the same time, she had real issues to resolve. For example, one of her biggest issue was relationship issue, why she never got to develop successful romantic relationship, and never uh, she was not able to build a family. Also, although she had education in English from a very prestigious institute, and she's very good in writing or reading, however, it was very, very hard for her to develop English speaking skills. And she thought it was not regular problems that comes from lack of practices. She felt that there was something more to it, and that's why she wanted to resolve those issues with me. And while working with her, we discovered a very, very interesting and found past life memories. Um, one is one was where she experienced herself as a Egyptian pharaoh, where she saw herself as a very angry man, and that explained some of her emotional, especially her anger issues. Um, and But at that time, I didn't really have much idea about where that lifetime would lead to. And then we carried on, and she also, when we talked about her English, speaking problem, we took her to, I think it was England. She experienced herself as a bishop, where she wrote a lot, but at the same time, she did lots of exorcisms. And then we found out from her guides that she may have spirit attachment issues. And that's when I wrote to you that, I was wondering how I should handle those issues. Yeah, with that, my spirit releasement therapy training really started. And this client's issue went beyond what I really expected, and we mostly concentrated on her sessions as spirit releasement sessions, but as always, past life regression was always a part of it. So we went back to those two important past lives, and we found out that her lifetime as Pharaoh shaped a lot in her. At the same time, we found out that she made an agreement with an ET to achieve a long life. And because the ET issue showed up many times, I couldn't really understand what the issue was. It was hard to do any releasement, but towards the end of our sessions, we found out that actually she made a contract and she accepted an ET to be part of her, to take over her body. So she had this somehow combined soul from the Pharaoh's time, also the ET. So that was a very interesting discovery, or it really expanded my understanding of how spirit works, or spirituality works, and how those kind of contracts and those kind of decisions we make in our past lives can affect our current life. And that was very interesting from the past life point of view. At the same time, when each time we talk about her English language blockage, this bishop who did lots of exorcism came up. And during one of our earlier sessions, we found out that there was actually a dark force entity attachment, and I thought I had released it. It was pretty simple, but after resolving many of her issues, and then we kind of came to the conclusion that, okay, so her origination had something peculiar in her, and that explained a lot about why she couldn't create relationship, why it was hard for her to build a family. At the same time, now looking into dark force entity issue, at the end, opened my eye to something new, because in one of our last sessions, we found out that the dark force entity was actually not released. And we had an interesting conversation talking about how the dark force entity attachment was there, not to be, not to be affecting her in many ways, but mainly blocking her English, to realize that she has something to do. Actually, I also have something to do in this life, to explore more about light and dark, and good and bad, the duality of this life. And yeah, we're still having conversations on that. But overall, concluding this case is that it was partly my client's journey of healing, but at the same time, it was a journey for me to develop as a healer, to become spiritual healer. So that was my conclusion. We're still working, but at to conclude her case, I would say that I learned a lot about how past lives, our decisions, our view of good and evil affects our life, our spiritual development. And at the same time, there's nothing actually good and bad or evil.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
quite a few things to unpack there. And the first one is, you start off as a psychologist, and then you work with issues in this life, and you think, oh, for 50% of my clients, they want to take it into a past life. And then you can take my Udemy course and learn some past life regression. And then when you do a few past life regression sessions, you can find out, oh, some of my clients need to take it into something beyond. Then you start talking about ETs, DFEs, and people are going, wait, what? I thought she was a psychologist. What is all this? And so we'll unpack about a little bit of what that means, and these dualities, good and evil, and dark and light, and dark forces. But first, I think it's just interesting that you can learn, if you've got a lot of background, you can have a look at the foundation course and do some simple past life regression, and can be pretty effective. But there is a certain point where complex things come up, and that's where some in-person mentoring is going to be invaluable. The courses are really non-interactive. So you watch a video and it's kind of like reading a book, and you really need to be able to have that interactive teaching. And so we can take it to the next level. And but there is still a lot you can learn on those past life courses, and people can then put it into practice and really get started and have some good results on the simple to moderate issues. When it gets more complex, then more complex teaching is really helpful. But with spirit releasement therapy, I also have a Udemy course on this. And that course, and the past life course, there's extra mentoring I can give that's specific, but a lot of the foundation information is already given. On the spirit releasement therapy course, because of the nature of that course, there's a lot of information I don't or just can't give to people who are uninitiated, to people who I don't know what experience they've got, and I don't want to put that kind of information in the public domain more than I already have, which is quite a lot. But there you can do simple releasement, and a lot of people take those courses and have things come up. And the benefits of having that course out there already is that people are not shocked and surprised. They are not confused and disorientated and think this is impossible, no one knows about it, this is all just too weird and strange. They can read my course or view it and understand what's happening, and then either put it back in its box, stay calm within themselves, and enable some simple releasements. And so then that may all be well and good. There certainly can be things that get more complex, as they have with you. So we've got earthbound spirits can come up. You haven't mentioned those, but even more complex, we get into DFEs, which are dark force entities, which often can have a malevolent or a kind of aggressive effect on some of our clients and blocking them in some ways, like you say, English skills. And then we can get into ETs, extraterrestrials. It can literally be, they can often attach devices or observe or get involved in ways that sometimes drain energy from our clients. But then this is something that can get very complex. Some people feel that they have some sort of positive influence as well, and that can be the case too. So we can get into now some of those distinctions. So we've now moved from past life regression into spirit releasement therapy. And then one of the key principles that they're bringing up here, the ETs are saying to you, we're looking at these dark forces as being dark and bad versus light and good. But ultimately, part of the therapeutic resolution in spirit releasement therapy is to transcend. Now, we've transcended science versus spirituality, and that could be a big battle that rages for hundreds of years. But we can transcend it and just heal people. And then this light versus dark can be a big battle that goes on for thousands of years. But we also can transcend that and get into a resolution that is above and beyond that. So how did you find, and so can you tell us a bit more about, how do you even define, or what do you mean when you say DFE, dark force entity, and how's that different from ETs and how are they interacting? So and all of this, by the way, remembering it came up during a past life regression. So you're regressing to the past life, but in that past life, they got a DFE attachment and an ET agreement. So this is all, and so that's why you can't, in order to do spirit releasement therapy well, you have to understand past lives really well. To know past lives, you have to know hypnotherapy. To know hypnotherapy, it's good to have a basis as a healer. But once you do get to all of this complex stuff, how did you unpack it? And so what was your understanding of DFEs anyway, and your experience meeting them for the first time?
Yeah, so I didn't really have much idea when I got into spirit releasement, especially about DFEs. And I think one of the reasons why I never got deeper into religious ideas or spiritual ideas before is that it kind of, really kept me very clean. So I was like a very clean slate. I didn't have much of preconception about dark entities or those equivalents in other religious beliefs. So I had very little beliefs related to that, and I think that helped me a lot to learn this idea of dark force entity. So at this point, I am, for my understanding, we during our spiritual development we have to go through different experiences, and for that reason we go through our past lives to see how we evolved basically. So and on that way at some point whether it is out of ignorance or out of certain certain limiting beliefs, we tend to call on dark force entities and make agreements. But that's really on the, I think it's on the surface. It is really about, although we look at it as a separate entity, it is really about us overcoming our own shadow sides, our own problems. So once you go through those problems within you, whether it is through practicing certain, for example, in Buddhism, they work with the mind, all the problems in the mind, but also at the same time through hypnotherapy, while going through releasement process of dark force entities, we understand a lot about our own, our own light and darkness in our own consciousness, and how we can evolve through that, and how we can evolve out of that through the experiences of the releasement. That's my current understanding.
Okay. And so what was it like for you, just even those first times you're doing hypnotherapy, you're doing past life regression, and suddenly someone says, oh, there's an ET, there's a DFE. Were you shaken? Did you find it scary? Did you not believe it? What was your first reaction? Because I know there are people maybe watching and they're thinking, oh, I read Brian Weiss, that's so nice. And I want to do like rainbows and light and past life regression, all this sweet stuff. But past life regression, it's like you will regress and remember people's deaths. So it's not all light. And there's, but the irony is that, in past life is actually so much about death, because you died in order to come into this life anyway. And so sometimes people say, oh, I'm scared to go into a past life because I might remember a past death. But that's actually, when you do remember that, it's a very light experience. So, what's the worst thing that can happen? We die. But then that becomes one of the most beautiful things that we can get a spiritual awakening from by getting it. So just in past life regression, we're dealing with what is supposedly a dark thing, but it turns out to be a very beautiful thing. And then we do spirit releasement. We find other people, that like, well, I was scared of having a past life death. Why would I want to do past life regression if dark forces and exorcism and ETs and deals with the dark side come up? I don't want to deal with that. That's far too scary and weird and terrifying. But as you go into it, that's sort of a light or dark paradigm. But if we go in just saying and understanding, what it is, we can deal with it with calm, clarity, confidence, and peace. So is that something that you found, or did you naturally bring in that kind of peace and understanding from some of your background, or is it something that you were a little bit shaken at the beginning, then you realized, oh no, it's okay, and you just kept asking questions, you kept following the process that I got there, and then through that you're able to get clarity and get calm and get confidence as you went along with it?
Yes, as I said earlier, I didn't really have much preconception. So when I experienced those, entities, it was definitely not pleasant in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say I had fear. I was more curious. I just wanted to know more about it. So I kept asking questions, and the more I worked with it, the less, uncomfortable feeling I had. It actually, things started making more sense, actually. It was not only the spiritual issues, it was also, I started getting lots of answer to my questions that I have with psychological services, and also I do cultural psychological research to really understand why people suffer, at the societal level, at a personal level. So it really answered a lot of questions. So I was actually enjoying that learning process. But while going through that, I think I really got rid of any misconception or anything if I ever had. Yeah, it was a really spontaneous and learning process, I would say. So yeah, it was, I think I was more curious.
Okay, yeah, that's nice. That's good. And it can be the first time it happens to people. It can almost be like, you're just driving along in the session and suddenly someone hits the accelerator and you're like, whoa, this is now getting a little bit more intense. And some people may just think it very scared, but you can just go, okay, I can drive. I can just stay on the road. It's actually quite exciting. Now I'm seeing the limits of what this vehicle can do. And I do have the resources here to know how to handle it. And I'm on a safe track. And so did you feel that, the training that we did and the videos that I had and then the mentoring, was that helpful, and did it make you feel sort of safe through the process? I mean, it's the first thing, safe, secure, clear on what to do. So it definitely can be confusing and it can be a bit overwhelming. But did you feel you're able to quite quickly through everything that you brought to it, were able to bring a calm and clarity to it?
Yes, exactly. And as you advise, we normally go through our whole course once, and then we have to go through it again. So going through the whole course itself uh, awakens you to a lot of things. And of course, we're not passive learners. We're always thinking and contemplating, and that clears up a lot of things. So you have this huge understanding, and then step into the therapeutic sessions. At the same time, as you said, the courses provide lots of methods. So you have this tools, a bag full of tools. So with that, you always feel confident and comfortable, well, in dealing with whatever that comes up. Of course, when something stops you, when something that you've never heard of comes up, it's always a little bit of shock. But at the same time, with those tools in your bag, going through the process with calmness and confidence that you get from the whole understanding of from your course, really takes you through a wholesome process.
Right. And I think having those tools there means that, if you're in a session and it does, start putting the pedal to the floor and speeding up, you can hold the wheel and keep it steady. I can't put a video course that has, deals with every single situation that could possibly arise, but that's what the in-person mentoring's for. So, but the tools are there that if things do, start to get pretty fast in the session, at least you can control it, manage it so that it resolves. You can resolve that session certainly in a pleasant, beneficial way for the client. Put it in its box a little bit, and then we discuss. And then it's like, okay, what's the plan for the next time, so that we can manage it even more based on all of the very specific individual things that have come up. So that's sort of part of the that advanced certification process that we went through, but that's what the advanced training is for. So tell us a little bit about, what kind of conclusions. So we've got a past life regression where the Pharaoh past life is there.
On the Pharaoh side, he did agreement with the ET because he wanted a long life, probably never-ending life. So they came up with the main message, or the main idea there was the greed.
Yeah.
So the ET took advantage of that. And on the other side, with the DFE, the DFE got to her when she was doing exorcism as a bishop.
Right. Okay. So just for people watching, just some of these terms. So we've got PLR, past life regression. While you're doing that, you found two past lives. The Pharaoh connects to the ETs, extraterrestrials, and the DFE is a dark force entity. So earthbound spirits used to have a body, but then they attached to people. Dark force entities did not have a body, but they're spirits that have a dark master who makes them go off and do tasks, but they are being deceived by that. So they can have a negative influence on people, but and also one way they have that influence is by creating ignorance, confusion, fear. But they in fact are being negatively influenced themselves to do that, and they themselves will come off as aggressive or attacking. So if you're doing sessions and that's what I'm saying, it starts getting a bit fast, it may be that an entity comes through and starts swearing or being aggressive or having a very prickly, attacking, aggressive energy. So that's why we want to stay calm, clear, and confident, which is, I know they're attacking me and cussing me like a troll, but I know they're only doing that because they're hurting, because they're ignorant, because they are being manipulated. They're trying to manipulate me with fear, but I'm not afraid because I understand what's happening. And they're being manipulated themselves. So the approach there isn't, I'm going to banish them and fight them and attack them and defend against their aggression. It's, I understand compassionately that they are being manipulated, and they are ultimately beings of light themselves, even though we call them dark force entities. And we use that as a term, and that is one way to see them, but ultimately they have light within them. So we end up releasing them and having them understand their inner essence of light, and that they are free from the deception and the demands and the contracts that they think that they're in. We're able to then help them break some of those things. So in terms of DFEs, and this can happen. So when you take people back and you're doing a past life regression, and it's like, oh, in my past life, I was a bishop doing exorcisms. And if I was doing it in ways that were not 100% skillful, then you may have some problems come up with them that you can help them clear them. So how did you ended up resolving it with the bishop? Or is what I'm saying so far making sense? And have you found that in your case study?
Yes, exactly. And the very reason that I believe that dark force entity attached to my client in that lifetime is that she and probably the whole society at that time had a lot of misunderstandings about light and darkness, and the very idea that like being judgmental about those dark entities was not really the way. I think that's what that was the main lesson in that. And as we went on with our sessions, we discovered that she did not only do exorcism in that past life, she did in many different lifetimes. And actually the DFE was mocking, then you got to go and do your exorcism. And as I said, it was I thought I released it in my earlier sessions, but actually it was not released, and it came back up, and then it said that people throughout generations and throughout centuries have been having very somewhat wrong or limited ideas about dark and light. Actually, it is not what we think it is. It is really about our own ignorance. It is about really realizing what can be dark within us. So that's what it wanted us to understand. And actually, as you said, everything is actually of light. So it kind of agrees to release as long as we spread this message that there is nothing dual in it. And if there is anything dark we think of as being dark, it is really our own, darkness, our own deeds that can make us, hurt others, make things without compassion, make things out of greed. It's all that.
Yeah, that's really important. So I think a lot of people, when they come to just wanting to release spirits in general, the very simple version that I hear a lot is people say, I've got this bad thing, we've got to command it to leave. And they will then, even in sessions, if it comes up, they may then get scared and then try and attack it and try and demand that it leaves and tell the spirit or the entity what to do, if it's a DFE or whatever, and just dictate. And occasionally that can work. But what normally happens is that the person thinks that it works. The person who's trying to be the healer and help them, they think, oh, I told them to go And then my client said that it had gone, and oh, I healed them. That was wonderful. I did such a great job in banishing and attacking and telling him to go. But that's really not how it works most of the time. That you'll be then tricked into thinking that it's been left. You'll be happy that you think you've healed them, but you haven't, and it's still hanging around in the background. So what we need to do is have a much more complex approach, which is to not to be scared or aggressive back to them, but to be very compassionate and loving and understanding of what's happening. And instead of dictating and telling them what to do, we can engage to a degree and find out. And when we engage, we really lead the conversation, but we do elicit information. So I don't let them lead the conversation, but we have a very structured guideline on what we want to say and what information we want to get, and we stay on track. So we're leading, but we are still eliciting information. Why did you attach? Why are you doing this? What benefit do you think it's giving you? How long have you been doing it? So we go through all of these things, and this can take quite a substantial amount of time to really understand the full story. And once we understand that story, we're gently getting them to a point of realization, which is, oh, based on all these questions you've asked me and all these answers, I now understand I can actually release. And so I think I'll do that. And we can say, oh, that's a great idea. So we make it feel like it's their idea, or we make them understand that that's possible. And that's completely different to just telling it what to do. We're asking it what's going on, and then it figures it out for itself through a very complex and detailed process. And so that's a big difference. So for a lot of people watching this who've maybe experienced spirit releasement therapy or seen some of the basic versions, I think it's really important to know there's a lot more steps you can take to get to a full and final resolution. So a lot of times people are really surprised. Oh, I did this releasement where I said, you must go into the light, and it said, okay, and I thought I was done. But there's a lot more to it in a lot of cases. So it's useful to hear that. And I think ultimately what you're talking about, getting to that transcendent part, and this is where we sort of come back a little bit to past life regression, which is we have all of these DFEs or ETs attached. They can be attached for thousands of years. So you pick up an attachment 2,000 years ago, it's still affecting you now, or 3,000 years ago. So time doesn't matter. These things, we carry them over. Some people get spirit attachments, a year ago. Some of the spirit attachments we see are 2,500, 3,000 years old, and they're still here and have been going on. And so we need past life regression to be able to figure that out. And then as we go into that releasement process, part of it is also realizing this was all just things that needed to happen one way or another. There's a karmic message and meaning behind this. There are lessons to be learned. And so is it a bad thing necessarily that I had this kind of spiritual experience, or good or bad? All it is, it's a learning experience. It helps us on a spiritual evolution. So that's another reason we don't have to be too afraid of it, or too, as you said, too judgmental. You don't want to judge yourself. I'm bad. I must have done something bad or made wrong decisions, and this is really important in a lot of therapies. You can regress people to past lives where they did terrible things, and then they have so much guilt. But by continuing through the process, you resolve any of that guilt towards themselves, guilt towards, or anger for what other people have done. So how did you find that you were able to get these therapeutic resolutions with your client? Did they feel this kind of guilt? Did they feel anger towards beings that might have, been there, anger towards themselves, guilt? And so then we end up with this forgiveness or these insights. So how did you get to therapeutic resolutions with this kind of thing?
Yes, of course, as you said, people go through different past lives where they have done different things. And looking at that, I think many times it kind of, the idea is kind of shocking to people. And they can always have this guilt or fear or anger. However, when I think this modality gives people opportunity to have multiple perspectives. It's not just me or you. It gives us multiple perspectives of how I affected others and how others affected us, and what is the general lesson from that. So I think this modality, the greatness in that modality is it allows that. So because we allow that kind of process to take place through the sessions, usually at the end of the session, most people have forgiveness, self-forgiveness, and forgiveness of others. And also they generally really took it as a lesson and go. And when I talk to other people and psychologists, and when they ask like how does all these things related to enlightenment, and I say, well, people wake up to different things during their own sessions, whether it is relationship, whether it is anger or greed, people wake up to at least something, and then yeah, that's what they take away from their session, apart from the emotional and physical healings.
Okay. And so that you mentioned as well, there are those kind of lessons and spiritual realizations and awakenings. So and then there was a part where it sounds like it was a bit personal for you as well. Like there were things your client could learn, but there were also things for you to learn in witnessing that session and facilitating it. So what would you say this type of healing work has taught or given you?
Yes, it was really a journey for me to grow, I think. And also the higher self of the client also said, why do you think we put this person in your path? It is for you to grow as a healer. It is really like your journey. So that was it. And that's why I think my client had all, like very rich background, very like multiple various issues that I had to go through while learning about them. And yes, ultimately, and one thing that was very interesting for me is that really the issues that come up or the issues seem to be resolved really depending on my development, my understanding. And the more I grow, the more complex issue can present themselves to me so that I can resolve them, or I can even grow to the next stage. So that kind of process took place for me. So in the beginning, it would not have been really possible to understand there's nothing, actually there's nothing good and bad, nothing dark and light. It would have been something too abstract for me. But after going through all those past lives and also all those conversations with the entities, now led me to that there's really, really no death, no and no darkness or no light, nothing good, nothing bad. Actually, there's just this, it's just the experience. We just go through the experience, and there's nothing really to judge. And if there is anything to learn, it is really us who go through our own biases and our own limitations and our own problems that we have. So yeah, it has been a huge process for me to awaken to many things.
Yeah, that's great. We talked about some of the prerequisites about, you're a psychologist and a professional healer. That really helps you take this training. But then as you took the training and did past life regression, your spirit guides or the universe just said, Meg, we're going to give you something really tricky. Deal with it. And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, what is this? And I better contact Mark and do some advanced stuff. But that part, and this can happen to a bunch of people. So they may be doing sessions and thinking, oh, I'm now out of my depth, or why is this happening to me? Or this is too weird. A lot of people email and say, I'd like to tell you what's happening, but you'll never believe me because it's too weird. And I get these emails all the time, And so, yeah, I probably would believe you. There's a lot of weird stuff. And so we can go through it. And so that's something where if people are having this kind of experience where things get very weird and maybe a little bit scary and a little bit confusing, there's a very short jump between scary and confusing to exciting and fascinating. And so with that
Yeah.
extra training, exciting and fascinating is just around the corner. And so once you get that clarity, get a little bit of extra help, and that I think the universe is pushing you to, take it another step further. And then when you do, it becomes fascinating, exciting, and interesting, and just really awakening for you as a therapist as well. So we're really helping our clients, but in spirit releasement therapy, more than a lot of other therapies, even it's one that really, I think, benefits the therapist doing it as well. And as you say, there's no coincidence. People are guided to see you as a therapist to get help, but they're also guided to you to help you in your development as a therapist and your understanding of things. And it's always a partnership as therapist and client, but it's really an exaggerated form of that mutually beneficial partnership. So what's the kind of things that you tell people who might be interested about doing this kind of healing work? Maybe they think, oh, it sounds a bit too exciting for me, or I'm not sure, about it. What would you tell people who are considering going down past life regression, or even maybe psychologists who are thinking about past life regression, or maybe past life people are thinking, oh, I don't know if spirit releasement therapy is something I want to do or not. What would you say?
Well, just going back a bit, I think the even through all the surprises and during my sessions, and the work of resolving them, would not really have been possible without mentoring. Because at certain point, you get to this a very surprising news. It's very intriguing and interesting, but without training, sometimes it's really hard to break through that. Yeah. So, for example, I really learned to have this conversation with whether it is the entity or the past life character to really get their story, to crack the case up. So that's really what I learned during the mentoring session. So, yeah. So, having said this, to those who want to pick up this study, I would say that, well, if you have this intuitive knowing that you have to do something like this, just follow through it and try and see it, because nothing actually happens. Nothing really hurts us. If you have fear, especially, it's just important to know that nothing hurts us. There's always a way out. There's always an understanding behind everything. So just try and start it. Starting the process itself is very important. So once we start, we go along the process. The clients who come to you will have the cases to crack for you to grow as a therapist. At the same time, also having a very like trusting, reliable, and skillful mentor like you, Mark, would help the process a lot. As I said, without your mentoring, it would not have been possible for me to go through those very, very complicated cases. So with this interest and intuition, and also the teacher, the mentor, the process can actually take you through a lot of interesting things. And before you know that, I think you'll be able to complete your training and realize that you can be a professional healer.
Okay, thanks for those kind words. That's good. And you're right. There is always that balance there, because I think a lot of times when these things come up, people talk a lot about like protection and protecting yourself from these things, and getting right to the healing and applying a therapeutic resolution as soon as you can. And sometimes that makes sense. I understand why people would do that, but but sometimes it's really most useful to have conversation. And there are times when that's not appropriate, there are times when it is. And part of the mentoring is to be able to tell the difference between those times, and to understand what genuine protection is. So a lot of times protection implies I'm under threat, I need to be protected. So you're thinking about protection, but you're implying that you're a little bit afraid, a little bit unclear. And so for me, the ultimate protection is knowing there's nothing to be afraid of, there's nothing to be protected from. You just converse, you understand reality, you maintain a calm, clarity, confidence, and peace, and then everything works out fine. So protection, I think, is there for people who need it, and to be honest, it's a beginning stage. But there's a point where your ultimate protection is just transcendental wisdom. That's the real protection that comes in. But that's easy for me to say. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I had to figure a lot of stuff out on my own, and that took me a lot of years. But you can have this stuff come up, and then you can contact me on Zoom, and you can get 5 years of learning done in a few months. And that's sort of part of the benefit and blessing of the internet and having, people around and available. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that that was really helpful for you. And that's another thing, but just with mentoring, sometimes people, you go down, oh, what do I do there? Oh, what do I do there? And just every time there's a little block, people can just get stuck there and never progress. But with mentoring, if there are 20 little things that might stop you, and that may be, you may never progress, or it takes you 5-10 years. But with mentoring, you're going straight through very quickly. So I think that's, the benefit is profound. And then that lets you get on and be a practitioner and spread the word and I really understand things in a short time really deeply, which is, what you've been able to do, which is really great to see. So I'm happy to see you're spreading the word and bringing that wisdom and understanding to all the people you're involved with in the scientific community and psychology, to the spiritual and the cultural communities in Mongolia and around Asia and Japan and everywhere. So great to see you doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and it has been unbelievable experience. I'm still like time-wise, I'm still a new healer, but it has been really intensified training experience.
It's great to see you doing a lot of great work. So if people are interested in finding out more about you or working with you and getting sessions or following you on social media and learning from you, how can they do that?
Yes, I just recently launched my website, Myagmarjargal.com. I think it will be in the link will be put in the video, although my name is a little bit complicated. Yeah, so you can find me there, but the English version is not launched yet. But yeah, I'm hoping to launch it really, really soon. So if you would like to contact me in one of these days, you can write to me to my email info.hypnotherapymn@gmail.com. Yeah, I'll be happy to contact with you and talk about your healing journey. And what I offer is that I call my main service as solution-oriented combined hypnotherapy, because many people come to me really for a very specific psychological problem or relationship problem, and many don't really have any idea about what age regression is or what past life regression is or even spirit releasement is. So although I offer them independently, many people end up coming to me just solution oriented. So that's what I offer. And please follow me on my Facebook, Hypnotherapy Myagmarjargal on Facebook, and it's the same for Instagram. Although I'm not very active on Instagram, you can find me in all those platforms, and I'll be open to work with you.
So that's great. I really encourage people to contact Meg to see what she's doing. And if they're interested and feel connected to her energy, then absolutely, she's a wonderful practitioner, and it'd be a privilege for anybody to be able to work with her. So Meg, thank you very much for coming on the podcast and sharing this journey. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to become a healer, and now today to talk about my journey and now my service. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for listening or watching. To find out more about my guest, see the links in the description for details. If you're interested in having personal sessions or certification training in hypnosis or hypnotherapy, or regression to this life, past lives, between lives, or spirit releasement therapy, then visit my website, the Past Life Awakening Institute.com, for details. Thanks so much for watching or listening, and see you next time.